Gute Woche und a freilichen Lagbeimer. The Rebbe soll gesund sein, again the first Sikha today, that today is Pashas Emor. And as Chazal, it's quoted in Rashi in behalf of Chazal, Emor ve'amarta. The Torah begins with Emor al Kohenim b'nei Aaron, and then the Torah continues right away ve'amarta alayhim. So there's a double expression of Emor ve'amarta, once Emor and again ve'amarta, you shall say, and again you shall say. Why is it a double expression? So Rashi brings in behalf of Chazal, lehazhir gedolim al haktanim. That here the Torah gives us a special instruction that the gedolim, the adults, have to warn, lahazir, they are cautioned that they have to make sure that even the ktanim, even those who are still young, will also follow and adhere to all the inyanim which are discussed here in this Sedra. Here the Sedra here particularly talks about the details which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave over the halachas for the Kohanim. And by Pasha of Kohanim, there's a special message that lahazir gedolim al haktanim, that the gedolim are responsible to make sure that also the ktanim will follow and do everything which is told by Moshe Rabbeinu. Not only the adult Kohanim, but even the ktanim Kohanim will also follow in all these details. But what we derive from all this is, and as the Rebbe brought it out, is this concept of lahazir gedolim al haktanim, the responsibility that gedolim have to relate to ktanim, and to make sure that the ktanim too will do everything which they are supposed to do. Which basically, as we will hear later in the Sichas, basically this is the concept of chinuch. The responsibility that gedolim have, adults have, to make sure that even those that are as yet youngsters will also do everything properly and accordingly. This inyan of lahazir gedolim al haktanim, once it is in effect, creates a unity between the gedolim and the ktanim. Because when the gedolim relate to the ktanim and are effective on the ktanim, that is when the gedolim and the ktanim all become totally united to the extent of a complete achdus, lahazir gedolim al haktanim, that all of them are totally in achdus, totally united, until it leads to a deeper taich in lahazir gedolim al haktanim, lahazir meloshn zohar, meloshn lichtigkeit, v'hamaskilim yazhiru kizoyach harakia, an expression of lichtigkeit, like the light of the heavens. In other words, when this is in effect, it creates a special lichtigkeit, a special illumination, the unity which has become between gedolim and ktanim, and how everyone amongst Klal Yisrael is totally united. And this inyan leads to that Yidden are effective of being the goy echad ba'aretz, Yidden are mamshich achdus here in this world, that this entire world becomes permeated with achdus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Echad, in numeric value, is also 13. By this, in effect, it leads to the revelation of the 13 midos of Rachamim. And all of this is coming as a continuation in the Sedras as well, the sequence of the Sedras as well. Because from after Emor, we go into the Sedra of Behar Bechukoisai. What is the inyan of Bechukoisai? Bechukoisai, it's also explained in Chassidus, is Meloshen Chakika, Meloshen engraving. What is the difference? Whether letters are written or letters are engraved. The difference is a very simple one. Letters that are written, so between the letters and the object that the letters are written on, is two separate inyanim. However, when there is an engraving of lettering on something, the letters and whatever it is engraved on is one object. The same when we're talking about the relationship between Yidden and Torah, which all of this comes as an outcome of lahazir gedolim al haktanim. When all of Klal Yisrael are totally united, and it's the Gedolim that are devoting themselves to the Ktanim. What does this lead to? What is the outcome of such an Avodah? The outcome of it is that Torah and Yidden are at a level of Chakika. In other words, Torah and Yidden are totally united. It's not two separate inyanim, Torah and Yidden, but Bnei Yisrael and Torah become one Metzias, become one. This is later continued as well. The forthcoming Sedra, which follows Pashas B'chukoisai, we come to Pashas Bamidbar. Pashas Bamidbar relates to the counting of the Eden. When we're talking about counting of Eden, we are referring to the 10th counting. The 10th counting will be taking place when Mashiach will come. In other words, all of this Aveda will lead to the coming of Mashiach. This Aveda of Lahazik Doila Malaktanim, the total union of Achdus. And when we're talking on the day before of Lag B'Omer, which is today, which besides it being the day before Lag B'Omer, it's also a day of Toiv Iyar, 17 days in the month of Iyar. Here it has a shaykhs to the Indian of Hine ma Toiv u'manoyim sheves achim gam yochad, which this Indian has a shaykhs to Rashbi, to the day, whose day is the day of Lag B'Omer. So this Indian of sheves achim gam yochad, the Indian of Achdus, which is created by Eden, this leads to the Indian of Geula HaSida. Then we will have the 10th counting, and then we will have the true revelation of Torah, the highest level of Torah. Torah Chadasha mi'iti teitzei. When will this come? This will come when, at the time of Geula. So all our preparations now, because now we are in the midst of the days of Sfiras HaOmer. Sfiras HaOmer comes as a continuation to Pesach. We begin counting Sfiras HaOmer Mimochas HaShabbos, the Torah tells us. So the minig of Chabad is that we begin counting the second night of Pesach, in middle of Ma'ariv, before Aleinu, and before we say Ach Tzadikim.
That's the minion of the world.
There are many Yidden that have a minig that they begin counting after the second Seder. Same night, but a few hours later, after the second Seder. Everything comes out the same. All the days are the same. The only thing is, instead of beginning to count right after Ma'ariv, or rather not after Ma'ariv, at the end of Ma'ariv, they will begin counting at the end, after the Seder. The Rebbe referred to it very briefly by saying the reason for it. Their reason for it is, being that the Torah tells us that when do we begin counting? Mimochas HaShabbos. Mimochas HaShabbos means from tomorrow of Shabbos. As Chazal interpret here, it does not mean Shabbos in the sense of Shabbos, but it means Mimochas HaShabbos from Pesach, Yontif, which is called Shabbos. So they claim, I refer to it very briefly, but imagine I hope this is the proper interpretation in it. If we are still going to celebrate a Seder, we celebrate 2 days Yontif. Why? Because it's a Sveika de Yoima. We do not know which is really the first day, which is really the right day of Yontif. So if we are still going ahead to celebrate a Seder, it is not Machas HaShabbos. Maybe it is still the first day Pesach. Once we have already celebrated the Seder and gone through the Seder, it is already Machas HaShabbos to the extent that we can count Sfir. However, Chabad does not do that way. Chabad begins counting right at the beginning of the second night, in the middle of Ma'ariv, before we said Aleinu and before we said Ach Tzadikim. Why? Because the whole union of Sfiras HaOmer, the Rebbe brought out in the previous weeks. Notice how we say in the Sfira. We say Hayoim Shnei Yomim Lo'imer, Hayoim Shloisha Yomim Lo'imer. In other words, the counting is a continuous counting. Today is the third day. It's not day. In counting, we could count 1, 2, 3. How 1, 2, 3 does not relate one to another. However, here it is the third day which comes after the second. The second which comes after the first. And in light of what Chassidus explains what Sfiras HaOmer is, because Sfiras HaOmer is that every day we are accomplishing another bit of purifying our own self. So today comes as a continuation to yesterday. Tomorrow will be a continuation to today. All of this comes as a continuation to Pesach. What is the whole idea of Pesach? As the Rebbe has been speaking recently, the whole idea of Pesach is reflected in the word of Pesach itself. Pesach is Meloshen, jumping. That's what the Torah tells us, because the Rebbe leaped over the homes of the Jews when he plagued the Mitzrim and he rescued us. The horror of it is that our Avodas Hashem also has to be in such a way. We constantly have to leap over, we constantly have to jump, go higher and higher. And this comes hand in hand with the message of Sfiras HaOmer. That is why we dafke begin counting Sfira when there is still a relationship to Pesach. Because from Pesach we come to Shavuos. Shavuos, again, the same idea. Gemara tells us that Shavuos is the only Yontif which the Torah does not tell us when its date is. Every Yontif, it's spelled out in the Torah very clearly when the date of the Yontif is. Pesach is the 15th of Nisan, Sukkot is the 15th of Tishrei, Yom Kippur is the 10th of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah is the 1st of Tishrei, and so forth. Pesach it is not mentioned. To such an extent. I'm sorry, thank you, Shavuos. Shavuos, it is not mentioned on what day it is. To such an extent that the Gemara tells us, Shavuos at times, when they did not have a fixed calendar, was able to be 5 days in the month of Sivan, 6 days in the month of Sivan, or 7 days in the month of Sivan. It would depend whether Nisan has complete 30 days, whether Iyar has complete 30 days, and depending on that, would be on what date Shavuos is. Why? Because Shavuos is always after we finish counting 49 days from Pesach. Comes to the 50th day, that is when Shavuos is. So Shavuos again is a continuation of Pesach. In other words, once we have gone through counting the 49 days, which means purifying the 49 midas in a person, that is when we are ready for Kabbalah Satayr. And again here, the word Sfira, relating to the same Taich as we touched previously by Lahazir Gdoila Malaktanim, that Lahazir is Meloshen Zoyhar, Meloshen Lichtigkeit, that the association of the Gdoilam and the Ktanim creates a special illumination. The same when we're talking the Aveda of Sfira, it's also Meloshen Usfartem, Meloshen Even Sapir. It's leading to an illumination. The neshama of a person, the yid of a person who's going through the process of Sfira Soimer. Rabbi mentions the Ram, Abinu Nisim, that tells us how did Sfira Soimer originate? Because when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, they were told that after 49 days they will receive the Torah. They were so anxious for Kabbalah Satayra that they began counting the days. It doesn't only mean counting the days in Gashmiyas. It means that in Ruchniyas they began preparing themselves so that they should be level, so that they should be at the proper level when it will come to Kabbalah Satayra. So that is why they uplifted themselves, usfartem meloshen even sapir, like a shining stone. This is what, like a shining diamond. This is what Sfira Soimer was to accomplish in them. Usfartem, they should become lichtig. Same idea, the same illumination, the same lichtigkeit. This is what Sfira Soimer leads to. And ultimately, from Sfira Soimer we come to the day of Kabbalah Satayra. There's a pasuk, B'yoyim chasunosoi u'b'yoyim simchas liboy. And Chazal interpret B'yoyim chasunosoi means what's the day of marriage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That is the day of Matan Torah. Or B'yoyim simchas liboy, what is the day of his joy? Chazal interprets Zeh binyan Beis HaMikdash. That is the day when the Beis HaMikdash will be erected. So ultimately, all of these preparations which we are doing now will lead to the ultimate simcha. And the ultimate simcha is what? The inyan of binyan Beis HaMikdash, which we are hoping for. The Rebbe right away in the first Sikha referred to the fact that there are guests here that have come particularly from the area of Tzfas. Tzfas is a city which is near Miron. Miron is the city where Kever Rab Shimon ben Yochai is, and as it's a minig by Yidden, hundreds of for many, many years, that on this day people go to Miron and are at the Kever of Rab Shimon ben Yochai, and especially this year that the going to Miron is, of course, Lag B'Omer is coming out on Sunday, so that in order to be there right at the beginning of Lag B'Omer, there are many that go there even to spend the Shabbos in Miron, and there's many minhagim involved of Yidden, how Lag B'Omer is celebrated by taking along sheep to Miron, and there's also the famous minig of lighting a medura, lighting a big flame on Lag B'Omer, and obviously if this is done on the night of Lag B'Omer, it means it is done tonight, because tomorrow night it is no longer Lag B'Omer, it's already Lamed Daled B'Omer. People from the city of Tzfas is one of the cities that have the title Ir HaKodesh. There are 4 cities in Eretz Yisrael which have the title Ir HaKodesh, and Tzfas is one of them. They have came here to spend time here, and of course, hopefully we will not have to bid farewell with them, because us together with them will all join together and go back together to Eretz Yisrael, which is something which we are hoping for constantly. The Rebbe continued in the second Sikha relating to Emor v'Amarta, which we spoke about earlier. Beginning of this week's Sedre, where Rashi brings together the word of Emor and the word of V'Amarta and interprets it Lahazir G'doyle Malaktan. Rebbe says it's brought in Svarim that Emor abbreviates We know what Alter Rebbe tells us in Tanya, and this is explained in Chassidus at length, that there are 4 Yesodos. Everything in this world relates to the 4 Yesodos of Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Ofer. Emor,
English. Fire.
there are 4 foundations in this world: fire, wind, water, and dust. Emor abbreviates the first 3 of them: Eish, Mayim, and Ruach. Reason why Ofer is not included, the Rebbe says the Ofer, dust is not included. The Rebbe says this can be explained because, as explained in Chassidus, the Yisod, the foundation of Ofer, consists of the other foundations as well. However, if we continue further in the Sedra, Emor, the Amarta, the difference between Emor and Amarta is that Amarta adds on a tuf, which Emor does not have. And this tuf, says the Rebbe, can relate to the Yesod of Ofer, because just like we are talking in these 4 foundations, Ofer is the very last of them. The same when we are talking in Aleph Beis, Tuf is the last of letters of Aleph Beis. So Tuf being the last of letters of Aleph Beis relates to the foundation of Ofer, to the foundation of dust, which is the last of the Yesodis. And here the Rebbe brings out, what is the Avodah of a Yid? It's explained in Sefer Yetzirah. There's a lot relating these 4 foundations. The Rebbe says we are standing right before Shavuos, and in the Tikkun, which we say Shavuos night, we say pieces of Sefer Yetzirah. The Rebbe says, notice something. The name of the Sefer which we use Shavuos night is called Tikkun. What's the Taich Tikkun? Tikkun means it brings a correction, corrects. It says even we are at the night of Shavuos, and we are going to prepare ourselves to Matan Torah, which we receive on Shavuos. What is something which corrects our preparation for Shavuos is the reciting of this Sefer, the Sefer of Tikkun. This shows us the importance of the Sefer of Tikkun. Getting back to our Inyan, Emor ve'amarta. And as Rashi continues in behalf of Chazal, lahazir gedolim ala ktanim. That the adults are warned and they are cautioned that they have to make sure that the Ktanim will also do everything that is proper, as we explained earlier. So here the Rebbe is bringing it out in Ruchnius. What is the Avodah Vayid? There is a level of Emor and there's a level of V'amarta. V'amarta being that the V'amarta has the tuf in it. Here it relates from Aleph till Tuf. In other words, this relates to Welt, to this world which includes all levels in it. And what do we say is the Avodah V'yid, Emor ve'amarta, to be mamshich, to bring in Getlichkeit, to instill Getlichkeit into this world. And this is also brought out yet clearer in Lahazir Gedolim ala Ktanim. What is Gedolim? Who is the real Godel? The real Godel is Yid. B'nai Yisrael, that's the real Godel. When we are saying what is cotton in comparison to this Godel, what is cotton in the true sense of cotton? It's this Gashmiistic world. Gashmiis is considered, cotton is considered small in relation to, relatively speaking, to B'nai Yisrael, who are considered Godel. And here we are told this message. What is the responsibility of Yidden? Lahazir gedolim ala ktanim. That B'nai Yisrael have to bring in lichtigkeit into this and illuminate this entire world. Which is basically the concept of dira b'tachtonim, creating this world, that this world should be a dwelling place, a place of residence for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when we're talking about a place of residence, it's such that it's really decorated, beautiful, as it's most suitable for a nice and pleasant residence to be. And that is such which we are trying to create, which is our obligation to create here in this world. Here in this world, by bringing Getlichkeit here into the world. Which is actually which we say in the Tefillah of Sfiras Omer, we say the same. In the Rabbeinu Shalom of Sfiras Omer, we stress And then we ask, Yushpa, Shefa Rav, in all level of these ilamis, in all levels of these world, should come down an abundance of good. In other words, this is stressing the concept how the Avodah V'Yid has to affect and illuminate all levels of this world. B'chol ha'olamis. Here the Rebbe asks a question. We say, Emor ve'amarta, that the Torah here is telling us, lahazir g'dolim ala ktanim, the responsibility of g'dolim, that they have to make sure, they are cautioned to make sure that the ktanim will do everything proper. This is something extremely fundamental in Yiddishkeit. Chinuch, to make sure that parents bring up their children properly. This is something extremely vital and extremely fundamental. It's something which proper parents understand, that what is their obligation? Their obligation is to bring up their children properly. As we see that the nature of parents is, when they see a child doing something wrong, when a child, chas v'sholom, gets close to something which is not kosher, not only do parents immediately react and make sure that the child gets away from it and has no shaykhs to it, but the attitude of the parents is that they get shocked. How is it that their child has some sort of an inner desire to go after something which is not kosher? Which all of this shows us the dedication of parents to children, how parents have to be dedicated to the fact of bringing up their children. And all of this is actually brought out in this idea and this concept of lahazir g'dolim ala ktanim. Asks the Rebbe, this is something so vital, so important. Why do we wait till Chumash Vayikra? And in Chumash Vayikra, not even in the beginning of Chumash Vayikra, we are waiting at the end of Chumash Vayikra. We know that when a child begins learning Chumash, we begin learning with him Chumash Vayikra. However, which part of Vayikra is it? The very beginning of Vayikra. Here Chazal tell us, Yavayu tahirim v'yisasku b'tahirim. Let come the pure, who are the pure kinderlach, and let them learn in yonim that relate to purity, which is discussed at the beginning of Chumash Vayikra. However, Pashas Emor is almost at the very end of Vayikra. So the Torah has waited till the very end of Chumash Vayikra. This is something which is so important, which should have been mentioned even before Aseres HaDibros. Not only before Aseres HaDibros, if you wanted to wait through Aseres HaDibros, Anoichi and Lo Yilecha, which Anoichi includes all of the mitzvahs Hasei. Lo Yilecha includes all of the 365 mitzvahs Lo Yisasei. Right after that should have came this message that teaches us on the importance of chinuch. Furthermore, once it's already mentioned here in Pashas Emor. Pashas Emor is an inyan which, what is discussed in Pashas Emor? An inyan which has a shaykhs to Koyanim. An inyan which doesn't even have a shaykhs to all of Klal Yisrael. And in Koyanim itself, what does Rashi tell us? Amir el Koyanim b'nei Aaron, the sons of Aaron, v'loi b'nois Aaron, not even the daughters of Aaron. So it's something which really requires an explanation. How come that an inyan of which is so important? Whole idea of chinuch, chanoich lanar al pidarkoi, to bring up a child in the right way, gam ki yaskin lo yosem memenu, so that will remain with him even when he ages. And when the Torah discusses it, it's not discussed at the very beginning, it's discussed here in Pashas Emor, and as we just brought out, in Pashas Emor, which is almost the very end of Pashas Vayikra. Getting back to the importance of chinuch, it says there's a minig of Neshei Yisrael HaKsheiros, kosher Jewish women, that during their time of pregnancy, they will not look at anything which is not tahir. Why? So that when the child, because this also has an effect on the child, and that the child should be totally permeated only within Yonim of Kedusha. Here, incidentally, the Rebbe here referred to the Tanya, talking about the Tanya, the Rebbe that Tanya already was printed in over 3,000 editions. And basically in every place where there's a Jewish community, Tanya was printed. It's a proper time to bring to our attention again that there are some communities, some Jewish communities, where the Tanya was not printed as yet. So to utilize it and make sure that the Tanya is printed in such places as well. Rebbe continued, obviously this question was left unanswered. The Rebbe continued that there's a Ramban. The Ramban tells us that all the mitzvahs which we do now is in a way of chinuch. What's the pshat chinuch? Chinuch means we take a youngster, a child, and we bring him up properly so that when he grows up, he will know exactly how to be mekayim the mitzvahs. Same the Ramban says, all mitzvahs which we do today are a chinuch to the mitzvahs which we will do la'asad lavi. La'asad lavi, when Mashiach will come, then we will really fulfill mitzvahs in the proper sense. Ki mitzvahs ritzonecha. This will be when Mashiach will come. So therefore, now we are going through a process of chinuch, preparing ourselves to be able to do the mitzvahs properly when Mashiach will come. And then we will come to a level that a deeper taich in Emor will be revealed. Emor does not only mean to say, the Rebbe brought out last Shabbos and today again, Emor is also a lashon of praise. There's a pasuk, V'Hashem ha'emircha hayoyim. The Rebbe praised you today. Yidden praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu praises Yidden. So what's the taich Emor, the Amarta, the real revelation of total unity between the Rebbe and Yidden, where one praises the other. The Rebbe brings the lashon of Chazal, that the Rebbe says, Atem asisuni chativa achas ba'olam. You have made me one piece in this world. Meaning, you have introduced the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You Yidden have introduced the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu here in this world. And therefore, the Rebbe concludes, he in turn will act the same way to Yidden. So, Emor, the Amarta, does not only mean Emor Meloshen saying, Emor is Meloshen praise, Meloshen Shvach. It's a praise from the Rebbe to Yidden and from Yidden to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbe continues with a Gemara Masechta Megillah. Masechta Megillah, the concept of Megillah, reminds us on Golus. Because the Gemara tells us, why do we not recite Hallel on Purim? So the Gemara, Akate Avdeda Achashverosh Anan. The Nes of Purim was not a complete Geula, because even after the miracle of Purim, Yidden was still enslaved to Achashverosh. So when we're talking about this concept of still being enslaved to Achashverosh, this is the union of Golus. And in the Masechta Megillah, there's a quotation, there's a Gemara, which Reb Shimon ben Yochai says. Reb Shimon ben Yochai, like Beimer is his day, says, come and see how dear are Yidden to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That all over, where Yidden went into exile, where Yidden went into Galus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu went along with them. Yidden went to Mitzrayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu went with them. Yidden went to Bavel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu went with them. And he brings quotations of Psukim to back his statement. In Ein Yankov, which compiles all of the Agadete of Chazal, brings the same quotation from Reb Shimon ben Yochai. However, Ein Yankov adds on. First of all, in Gemara, he's referred to as Reb Shimon ben Yochi, without the Aleph. And Ein Yankov refers to him as Reb Shimon ben Yochai with the Aleph. But yet more. In Ein Yankov, he adds on other Golison as well. The Gemara only discusses Golas Mitzrayim and Golas Bavel. And in Yankov he brings out other Golas, including Golas Edom, which is the Golas which we are in now. And that all of these levels of Golas, Yidden have the Shechina with them. Which this Sefer of Ein Yankov, which is a Sefer which is learned by many, as custom by Yidden would be, even those who are incapable of learning Gemara, nonetheless, they would learn in Yankov. And here in Yankov, it really brings out, what's the pshat there? Additional Golas. Each additional Golas which Yidden go into, that means a lower Madriga in Golas. And when we talk, but Bechlal brought us for him regarding Golas Bavel, that at Golas Bavel, Yidden were at such height, even higher than in the time of Bayeshem. So to say that the Shechina is with them in Golas Bavel, Yidden were the high Madriga. What Ein Yankov is introducing, that even in Golas Edom, which means these dark moments of Golas which we are in right now, even at this level of Golas, Also, Shechina Imoim, the Shechina is with them. And who is saying this? This is being said by Rab Shimon ben Yochai. Rab Shimon ben Yochai is the one that's bringing out the greatness of Yidden. Kamachvivin Yisrael Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That even at the furthest point of Galus, Shechina is with them. This is the same Rab Shimon ben Yochai that says, Yechilno lifter Esoila min adin. He is capable to release the entire world from judgment, to free the entire world from judgment. Even though we're talking about Rab Shimon ben Yochai, who when it came to bring out who are the Bnei Aliyah, who are the elevated people, who are the special people, he said if there are not many, it's him and his son Rabbi Eliezer. But at the same time, he realized that he can release the entire world from judgment. What does this mean? How can he do it? By his dedication to the entire world. By his dedication to each and every Yid. It's not something which he was just bragging about his power. It's he had this power because this is what Rab Shimon ben Yochai stands for. And here again he's bringing out the same idea. He's also bringing out how dear Yidden are to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That even in the furthest point of Galus, Shechina Imoim, the Shechina is with Yidden. And this is something which is brought out, dafki, revealed, where in Gemara it's not even mentioned, but in Ein Yankev, which means those Yidden that do not even have a shaykhs to the learning of Gemara. Those that Gemara is too complicated for them. The message is brought to those Yidden as well. Women who are not even learning Gemara. However, Ein Yankev women are learning. So to men and to women, this message is brought. How dear Yidden are by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here mentioning about women learning Torah, the Rebbe says, now generations we see that women are learning much more than they've learned in previous generations. Though this is something new which was introduced, but nonetheless we see Ma'aser Rav. Best example is when we see how it is done. This is what we have seen by the Frierdiker Rebbe, the type of chinuch he gave to his daughters, and the institutions which were founded by Chabad. Dafke in these generations, when Achsher Dore Bitmiya, as the expression goes, is the expression in Gemara, Achsher Dore, is then this generation prepared for it? It's an expression with a question, Bitmiya. Is then this generation prepared for it? But nonetheless, we see that dafke in this generation, women are learning much more Torah than they did in previous generations. Even the women are obligated to learn halachas, which they have to know, and all the inyanim which relate to the constant mitzvahs, which women are obligated to equal as men. Mitzvah of loving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and all these 6 mitzvahs which are enlisted at the beginning of the Sefer HaChinuch. But nonetheless, women are learning even more Torah now. And this really relates to what the Gemara tells us in Brachas, that the schus of women is that they wait for their husbands and for their children to come home from learning of Torah. And by the fact that not only are they waiting, but they themselves are learning Torah in these generations, this is an added influence which they can have on their husbands as well as on their children. This is also something which is negayah to the upcoming Women's Convention, which will be taking place here next week, and we take care of public matters on Shabbos, mefakchin al tzorchi tzibur b'Shabbos, to make sure that at this convention, which will definitely be utilized properly, to talk about the Indian of chinuch, education, and the Indian of chinuch for each and every Jewish child, to make sure that each and every Jewish child will get a proper Jewish chinuch. The Rebbe urged that this should be discussed and taken up at the convention. After the first 2 sichas, which were relatively long sichas, the Rebbe spoke 2 very brief sichas. The third sicha, the Rebbe said that all the guests that came, particularly the guests that came from Eretz Yisrael, should say l'chaim in a way of hinei matoiv u'manoyim shevasachem gam yochad, which brings out achdus and unity, and this l'chaim should bring to the real bracha of l'chaim v'levracha, and to chaim nitzchim, to eternal life, which we are waiting for, the coming of Mashiach, when we'll have a real l'chaim v'levracha. The last sikha the Rebbe referred to, also taking care of public matters on Shabbos, and being that we are right before Lag B'omer. Lag B'omer is tomorrow, to make sure that all the Lag B'omer celebrations and Lag B'omer parades, which will be taking place all over the world in a way of Ufaratzta, Yomov, Akedmov, Itzafeinav, and Negba, should all be with the highest peak of success, and we should utilize all the remainder time left to see to it that all these celebrations should be in a way of Beroiv Hadras Melech, that it should really bring glory and beauty for the king. Was here at the very end, the Rebbe said to sing Hinei Matoiv U'Manoyim or Ufaratzto, And when there was some sort of, I've alluded to it, to combine these nigunim. The Rebbe said, if there is such a nigun. So what they tried doing was, make with the tune of Ufaratzta, the words of Hinei Matoiv Umanoim.
Wasn't bad.
Hinei Matoiv Umanoim, Hinei Matoiv Umanoim. Achim gam yochad sheves, Achim gam yochad. Matoiv umanoim sheves, Achim gam yochad. Hinei 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 matoiv umanoim sheves, Achim gam yochad.